right, good evening. I'm Ken Stroop. I'm the Chief of Staff of the UVA Center for Politics. I had to write that down so I would remember it. And it's great to continue our partnership with the Jefferson Council on events like this one. Gatherings that are timely, informative, and help broaden the spectrum of views and voices on grounds. Many of you already know the man I'm about to introduce. Joel Gardner is the president of the Jefferson Council, a double who, a respected attorney, a former investment banker, and one of the university's most devoted alumni. Under Joel's leadership, the Jefferson Council has strengthened alumni engagement, championed free expression, and worked to uphold the university's founding values. As students, Joel and my boss at the Center for Politics, Larry Sabato, served together on student council. And believe it or not, they were allies. And Larry just thinks the world of him. So please join me in welcoming a proud son of the university, our friend, Mr. Joel Gardner.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to introduce our guest speaker this evening. For many of you who live in the Commonwealth, no introduction is necessary. You've seen and heard John Reid covering and commenting on the major topics of the day for well over a decade as a TV news anchor and subsequently as a thought-provoking radio commentator. This lifelong Virginian began his career in public service as an intern for President Reagan and then served as communications director for Virginia Senator George Allen. During his career as an investigative reporter, news anchor, and radio commentator, John is focused on many of the major issues facing Virginians today, including crime, corruption, government accountability, and consumer protection. Now seeking the position of lieutenant governor, John wants to bring his deep knowledge of and concern for these issues to serve the citizens of the Commonwealth. Whether or not you have always agreed with him, it is well accepted. He has always spoken with clarity, common sense, and conviction about the issues that matter most to us. And John has always been willing to discuss these matters civilly with anyone, anytime, and anywhere. So now let's give a big wahoo welcome to John Reid.
Well, this is truly wonderful to be in this room, in this building, on this plot of land that is so important to the history of the Commonwealth and the history of the nation. I have to tell you that this may wind up, win or lose, as one of the highlights of this entire year-long campaign. And for someone like me who's had a number of family members who have attended and graduated from the University of Virginia, who revered this institution, for me to be asked to speak as a candidate is a wonderful thing. I wish my grandmother could see this, and I think this might be one of the things my dad would be very excited about in this campaign too. So I'm appreciative of that, and I thank you for having me. Joel, thank you, and I want to thank the folks who are a part of the Jefferson Council. This is interesting. When the invite came in, some of you who listened to my program on WRVA will remember that I've been kind of hypercritical of some things associated with the management of the university. And I don't take them back. Let's just be clear. However, I appreciate what you said, Joel. I always try to be thoughtful in the comments, even at 6 o'clock in the morning when you're waking up. And I have always tried to be fair and do some research before I would open my mouth to comment about former President Ryan and some of the board members and some of the challenges that the school faced. So I want to assure you that that mindset that I tried to demonstrate on a regular basis at WRVA, on what some consider to be a frivolous job. To me, it was one of the most important jobs I've had, even having worked for a former president. I will attempt to carry through, if I'm blessed enough to be lieutenant governor, with that mindset going forward. The reason that that job was so important, and I don't know how many people here are spiritual and put their faith in God. I, quite frankly, didn't expect to ever come back to Richmond in a broadcasting job. I had done that for 10 years at the ABC TV station. I was relatively successful. I got tired of reading the teleprompter and going to war with the liberals in the newsroom every day and reporting on murders and drug deals and crooked politicians. That started to bore me. And I decided, I don't want to be the face of a television station, like the Mickey Mouse of a television station. I'd really like to do something with my life, not to demean the people who are in that business, but I'd like to do something perhaps more consequential. So I had the opportunity to go and work for another great alum of this school, George Allen, in the Senate. I was very proud of the work we did there when he was on the Foreign Relations Committee. It was a remarkable experience, and I'll tell you a story about how that opened my eyes to some of the problems that we're having in our government. But I came back to Richmond and was excited to be on this 100-year-old radio station. In fact, WRVA turns 100 on November 2nd, coming up just before the election. And I'm very proud to have been a small part of the legacy of that station. And for a few years, I was kind of getting my sea legs and trying to understand how to do radio. I'd always done television where you had a script and someone else had written the script, and I would fight with them about what information needed to be in and what information needed to be out. But on radio, they flip the switch and the light goes on, and it's you. And hopefully you're prepared. And hopefully you have put some thought years earlier into what you might be asked to comment on. I didn't get to pick the stories that were being discussed. And in 2020, it became clear to me why God had put me in that chair, not at the Today Show that I always dreamed of, making $10 million a year. Katie Couric would understand the difference between local radio and national television. The riots in Richmond were devastating to me. My hometown, abused by protesters who turned into rioters, who took a $250,000 bus in a city that can barely afford to put toilet paper in the boys' bathroom at the middle school and burned it in the middle of the street. The police officers, some of whom were my friends, who I had covered when I was at the TV station, one who had gone to elementary school with me, pelted in the face with balloons filled with urine and feces. Not one night, because bad things happen one time. Night after night after night. Businesses burned out and looted. Black-owned businesses by, quite frankly, very arrogant white people who didn't care about the black lives in my home city and took it upon themselves to permanently damage those people. And at first I thought, this is a one-off. Bad things do occur and everyone's gonna come back to normal. And then it happened a second night and a third night and a fourth night and a fifth night. And then it went into the next week and the next week. And I realized, no one's gonna save us. Everyone's a coward. Everybody's a coward. I hate to say this, but the governor of Virginia was a coward. He was a Democrat, which that's not the indictment, but he was a coward. He left the city to burn. the Democrat mayor of Richmond, who I fully expected would be my opponent for lieutenant governor. He was a coward. He couldn't stand up to protect the people of the city of Richmond because he had to have some sort of allegiance to the people who were being violent. The prosecutor, also a Democrat, refused to prosecute the people who were going out night after night and causing problems. And again, not just protesting, committing crime and harming innocent people. The members of the city council, cowards, too scared to be called racist to stand up for law and order and justice in the city that they were sworn to protect. And it became clear to me, the reason I'm at this radio station, at this moment, in this century of broadcasting, is that this is my town. This is where I was born. These are the people I know and care for and love, and I'm damn well gonna stand up for them. And I did every single day. And boy, that was tough. Those same police officers warned me that Antifa was stalking me. They told me to tell my partner, Alonzo, that we should watch our backs. He's a football coach. So they said, be careful when you're on the tour with the team, when you're going to different games, be careful. Antifa's looking for the two of you. An interracial gay couple, they're looking to stalk and hurt us. Why? Because I stand up for law and order. How crazy is that? How unacceptable is that? How outrageous is that? We lost advertisers on my program. I said, I don't care. My boss didn't like that, but that's how I felt about it then, and that's how I feel about it now. Standing up for what is right, objectively, is what a man should do. Defending people who have done nothing wrong is what a leader should do. And we have been mistreated and neglected and abandoned by some people who should have known better. And for the rest of my time at that radio station, including during what I consider to be, I know this is something that may cause consternation, I thought we were very tyrannical in the way we handled COVID. There didn't seem to be much concern about stomping on the individual rights of citizens, about closing businesses, watching them fold, picking and choosing who the winners and the losers were from the governor's office, harassing people, regardless of whether they had a medical concern that was legitimate or not. We didn't seem to care. I think that showed that we're off track as a people. And I'll be candid with you. This has caused me great consternation for 4 solid years, even with the miracle of Glenn Youngkin, Winsome Sears, and Jason Miyares coming in to correct the course for the state. I just couldn't believe that this was my home state and this was what we were tolerating and these were the things that were happening. I went away on vacation for New Year's and thought, should I give up a good paycheck? It's a pretty good paycheck. By Richmond standards, it was a good paycheck. And sure, I had to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, but that's one of those things you just write off. I was home by 1 or 2 in the afternoon and had the rest of the day. There's a lot of good stuff about it. And I did have an influential show. The governor came on, including some Democrat governors, senators. I mean, this was an influential position. And I thought, this is stupid. I can't possibly walk away and put myself in harm's way and lose my income to run for lieutenant governor. That's foolish. And I got back from vacation almost with the conclusion that that would have been the wise step. And then someone called me and said, you're not going to believe what's happening at the Capitol. This is this year, January of this year. What? Go down and see for yourself. In the middle of the night, I drove to the Capitol, and they were installing porta-toilets in front of the governor's mansion. The Capitol was closed with a line of porta-toilets in front of it. The hospitals started sending out emails saying, we can't perform surgeries because we don't have potable water. The Marriott across the street starts trucking in water so they can flush the toilets for their guests. This is a first world capital city in the United States of America. Now, like I say, bad things happen, but may I politely suggest to you that a major metropolitan area doesn't lose access to water for weeks on end because the political leaders are actually paying attention. They lose those fundamentals of civilization when the politicians and the people that you think should be your leaders are distracted by racial division, CRT, DEI, refighting the Civil War, allowing people to run wild in the streets and decide which art and tombs and monuments and memorials stay up and which ones fall. This is not wise management. And quite frankly, I would have expected more from Democrats, regardless of whether I agreed with them on public policy. And I would have expected more, and I will be critical of people in my own party. You better get used to that if I'm elected. I would have expected more from my own people in the Republican Party to stand up and say, we will not tolerate this. So we got to the beginning of January, and this has occurred. The General Assembly has to go home because they can't function in the state capitol. How often does that happen? And I said, the choice has been made for me. I have to quit this job, and I have to take up the burden of trying to be a responsible leader for my people in Virginia. And that is why on January 27th, I started this campaign for lieutenant governor. That's why. And it has been a remarkable journey. A lot of ups and downs. It has been an eye-opening experience about how vicious and mean and deceitful some people can be. It has been a personal journey of trying to forgive and not be obsessed with anger when I feel like I've been wronged. And if I'm going to be a leader, rising above that for the state, for the success of this election, and I truly believe if I'm elected, I will do a good job for you as lieutenant governor. I can't be obsessed with settling scores with every person who attacks me or does something wrong. I have to stay focused on the end goal, and right now the end goal is winning, but for the next 4 years, if I'm sent to Richmond, it is to do what is right for the people of Virginia and to show that bravery that I don't think has been shown prior. There are a few issues that I discussed, and I know some of you will be interested in policy, and I don't want to shortchange that. Wherever I go across the state, whether it's Arlington or Alexandria, whether it's Abingdon or Bristol, Roanoke, Virginia Beach, I talk about three things. The economy. And I talk to some of the students who are fourth years here, who are getting ready to go out into the real world. And I said, do you have a job yet? And a few people said, well, I'm interviewing, I'm looking at things. Let me tell you, we have enough social justice warriors at the state capitol. With all due respect, because I don't like to assign negative intentions to people that I may disagree with, we have a lot of people at the Capitol who feel very strongly and passionately about a specific issue. Perhaps it's welfare, perhaps it's abortion, perhaps it's higher taxes. You pick the topic that we talk about on a regular basis, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to someone who feels strongly about those issues. But what is missing from our government today are the types of leaders who had broad experiences in life and who knew what it was like to balance a ledger book. Heck, I'd take people who could balance a checkbook these days at the state capitol. I think that would be very helpful to have that broad spectrum of experience upon which to base good decisions at the Capitol. I think that's missing now. And I would humbly suggest to you that my background not just as a reporter covering other people's problems, but as a communications director and then as a partner of a major government relations firm and working deals around the world. And I lived in Kuwait, I lived in Bahrain, I've been to 113 countries. I think I'm probably the most well-traveled person to ever run for statewide office, which I think means something, especially when you consider that most people think Republicans are racist, homophobic, and xenophobic. I hope I can knock all three of those off the table right from the beginning. The right to work in Virginia is an imperative, and Democrats used to agree with me on this. Chuck Robb, Jerry Beliles, Doug Wilder, even Tim Kaine and Mark Warner, who are our current senators, all used to agree we don't touch right to work. Why? Because it brings jobs to Virginia. We're in competition with other states across the country, and the ability of a CEO to bring a business here and not have to share their desk with a union boss from New Jersey is pretty appealing. And that is why George Allen and Jim Gilmore and Bob McDonnell, and to his credit, our current governor, Glenn Youngkin, have been so successful at bringing major business operations to the state. We have a wonderful beach. We have beautiful mountains. You have beautiful UVA. That's not why they're coming. They're coming here because the business climate is affirmative for them instead of hostile to them. And I would suggest to you that it's important for us to pick leaders across the board, but especially in the position of lieutenant governor, in a Senate that is almost tied. There are 40 seats, 21 Democrats, 19 Republicans. It is likely that whoever wins this race is going to make decisions on some of the most controversial issues and some business issues going forward. You need someone who's going to think about whether this expands freedom for the citizens or whether it restricts it, who makes the decision based on whether it provides additional opportunity for new jobs and new businesses or whether it crushes those opportunities. Because I want to promise you, the leaders of Tennessee, they're thinking about that. And they're thinking about how to steal jobs from Virginia. I don't blame them, but that's what's happening. Same thing in North Carolina, same thing in South Carolina. You've got to elect people who are smart and are thoughtful and not emotional in the moment, but thinking a decade or two down the road. I would humbly suggest to you that I am one of those people. I have tried to prepare for this role, not just this year, but over a lifetime. Education is very important, and perhaps some of you saw my opponent released, I gotta give it kind of a slick TV ad today, saying that I want to destroy public education in Virginia. I'm so glad that she used that word because it's so outrageous and over the top. I don't think anybody will believe it when they recognize that my father was a public school teacher and later, for a decade, a principal at a middle school. My mother was a public school teacher in Charlottesville. My grandmother, for 25 years, was a public school teacher in the Greensville County Public Schools, a very rural area that's not flush with cash. She talked about how she would buy supplies for school. I get it. My grandfather was a principal at the end of the war. I'm a product of the Henrico County Public Schools, and quite frankly, some of you will recognize the name St. Christopher's. That's where I went to high school. It was a family tradition to go there, but the real reason I went, if we're being honest with each other, is I couldn't do the math, and I needed extra attention. And St. Christopher's took a classroom of 24 in the public school and shrunk it down to 12, and that's what I needed. And fortunately, a non-rich family, we scraped enough money together for me to be able to go to St. Christopher's. Now, why, may I ask, and if Senator Hashmi would ever do a debate, I would ask her, why are we restricting other families from having that opportunity? Not everybody's loaded with cash. I get it. But if you are stuck in a neighborhood where you go to the public school that's offered to you, and objectively, the public school is not delivering for those students. They're graduating people who can't read and write. They're graduating people who don't know history. They hate the society. They hate the man. They are not prepared to be good citizens. And notice, I'm not saying you have to agree with me. I'm not saying you indoctrinate people to be right-wing conservatives. I'm saying you have someone who can have that discussion about an issue. If we're not preparing those students in those schools, why would we continue to fully fund a system that is failing many of our students? Why would we do that? Senator Hashmi is the chair of the Education Committee and has been for a few years now. She seems like she's very proud of the $21 billion we're spending on education. Okay, that's double the amount of money we were spending 5 or 6 years ago. I would question whether we're spending our money wisely, or would it be smart to think outside of the box and to provide some mechanism where students and parents who felt like the school system was not serving them could go and seek another alternative, quite frankly, with the tax money they're paying already. I think that's smart. I think that's wise. And that does not collapse the system. It does not destroy the public schools. It provides opportunity for Virginia citizens. And let me tell you, that's why I'm running for lieutenant governor, is to provide those opportunities going forward. We're not going to keep doing things just because we've been doing them. Let's come up with some solutions. And I promise you, if I get to the Capitol, I need people to arrive there with an open mind and an open heart and a fresh set of eyes to come up with solutions rather than just kicking the can down the road. You've heard me talk about the culture war, and I hate that that is really what it has turned into, a culture war, a political war. Now, I lived in Kuwait and Bahrain during the Arab Spring when there was an active campaign to kill a real king in each of those countries, to murder every member of the royal family. And I saw the violence occur and innocent people being harmed in person in the Middle East. I was in Baghdad. I was in Erbil in Kurdistan, the northern part of Iraq. There's some bad things that happen when there's a revolution. And may I suggest to you, not that I'm a sage, not that I'm 100 years old with the great wisdom of someone of that generation, but we don't want that type of revolution in America, and we certainly don't want it here in Virginia. We want leaders who will recognize and acknowledge and be candid about our differences, and then sit at the table and discuss those differences and come up with solutions. That's not what we have right now. We want citizens who feel free to express themselves online, in person, at a protest if you feel like that's necessary, not a riot, but a protest, without shooting someone. Tonight, I went to the closet in Richmond, and I picked out this suit to wear, and I picked out this tie to wear. And then, because I'm coming to the University of Virginia, I chose not to wear my bulletproof vest. Did you hear what I just said? In Virginia, running for lieutenant governor? That's sick. That's sick that we're in that situation where someone like me, who tries to be reasonable, who will shake hands with anybody, who will talk to just about anybody, is truly wondering every day that I get up, is this my last day? Somebody's got to fix that. And I'm going to try. That's why I'm running, is to try to recalibrate the hostility and the danger that exists in our society right now, because I've seen how horrible it could become if we don't have reasonable leaders. When I worked for Senator Allen, this is 20 years ago in the United States Senate, Jim Baker, who was the Secretary of State under President Reagan, came to visit. And he sat down with Senator Allen and he said, it's a horrible story, that his granddaughter had drowned in the bottom of a swimming pool. She'd been sucked into the drain. Terrible, awful, awful death that you can't imagine. And he said, Senator, I need help because we've found a way to stop this from occurring. It's a $3 piece of plastic. It's a little dome that you put over any size drain, and it prevents the suction from holding the child at the bottom of the swimming pool. You don't even have to drain the pool. So, we don't need a federal program. It's not going to cost $1 billion. We're not going to have federal oversight of all of this. We've just come up with a solution. Can we pass this through the Senate? We worked for a year to pass that bill through the Senate. I don't even want to know what horse trading went on to get something that basic through the United States Senate. It goes to the U.S. House of Representatives, and a senior Democrat from Florida, oddly enough, a place where everybody has a swimming pool in the backyard, kills the bill. I couldn't believe it. Are you kidding me? This is the one thing saving kids and it doesn't cost you any money. Surely we can agree on this. Oh no, we couldn't agree on this. I was the president of the Senate Press Secretaries Association, like the last group on Capitol Hill where Republicans and Democrats could stand in the room together and talk. Weird that the communications people were able to do that and nobody else was. I was hot the day this happened. I went into our meeting, and I'm the president of it, so I need to comport myself appropriately. And I said, what the hell is wrong with you people? How could you do this? How could you do this with this bill? Is there something I missed? Is there a cost that I don't understand? There's got to be some reason. One of them looked me right in the eye and said, John, you understand? I said, I don't. We can't give your guy a win in an election year. Now that's sick too. That's how toxic Washington was 20 years ago. Can you imagine what it's like now? And there's lots of blame to go around for that. But it's incumbent upon us to send people to represent us who will be tough, who will be strong, who will be clear, perhaps be clear in ways that will shake people up and make them open their eyes. Doesn't all have to be polite, but who will stand up for the people. And that is one example of what I do not want to see take hold of the Capitol in the Commonwealth of Virginia, where American liberty was born. And I promise you, if I get to the Capitol, you may not like everything I have to say. You may not like every vote that I cast. You may not like every speech I give. But you will know exactly where I stand, because I've got no problem telling you. You will have an opportunity to share your thoughts with me. And I hope, even if you disagree, you will be assured that I'm trying to make the best decision at this moment for the people, not for the politics. Not so that we can win the next election 2 years from now, but so that we can solve these problems today. And I just hope that if there is a ghost of Thomas Jefferson in this building, that he would be nodding his head to hear somebody say that in 2025. So let me conclude, and then I do want to, unlike my opponent and unlike many politicians, I want to take some questions from you. Here's what I share with everybody around the state. If I go to the Capitol, I want to be the person that you look at and are confident that I will be reasonable, even if you disagree with me, that I will be responsible, even if you disagree with me, that I will be respectful of other people, even those who disagree with me, and most importantly, that every decision I make, I will put aside those emotions and the hostility that comes from being in this arena, and I will try to be fair to everyone in this state, no matter their age or their sexual orientation or their gender or their status of any kind. in Virginia. That's why I left the radio station. And that's why I'm running to try to save the people and the state that I love. And I thank you for having me here today. Okay. Did Corinne Jean-Pierre go to UVA? I don't want to insult her. I usually joke at this point I'm better than Corinne Jean-Pierre, but it struck me maybe she went. I don't want to insult one of the alums, so I guess I just did anyway. But I'm happy to take some questions, and anybody have any thoughts? Who would like to go first? I'm sure there's someone out there who's like, I can't stand this guy. Maybe that's not you, but yes, ma'am. Okay.
What is the most difficult question? Really, we have to make it worse? What's the most difficult question you've been asked on the trail so far, and what was your answer? Or the most, I hate to say common one, because we could probably all guess some of those, but just the more interesting exchange you've had, because I'm following you on X, and by the way, while you're driving, who is posting all that?
I always pull over.
Sure.
At least I'm not driving 116 miles an hour, right?
No,
You know?
I have to tell you, as many times as you post where you've been, I'm pretty sure it's more than that. Okay, just a little math.
I've been all over the place.
All right.
And I'm proud of that. You know, you find this to be an interesting story, and then I'll try to answer your question directly. When I was thinking about running for this, I called a lot of people. I sat down with a lot of different people. Some people were very enthusiastic about the possibility. Some people were kind of skeptical. And I called Doug Wilder, who had been on my radio show a number of times, Democrat, first African-American governor in America. I didn't know whether he would be willing to sit down with me or not. And I said, I'm thinking about doing this. And he looked at me and he asked me why, and I kind of went through some of the abbreviated version of what I just shared with you. And he said, well, you're going to lose unless, and my ears perked up. He said, unless you get in the car and you go out and meet people, because there are going to be a lot of people in this state who are skeptical of you. There are going to be a lot of people, Republicans and Democrats, who are going to hate you from the moment you step out to do this. And the only chance you've got of solving that problem is to show you're willing to work and to show you're willing to talk to people and to sit and listen to a 90-year-old lady tell you all of her problems for the last 80 years and show that you've got that compassion. And I thought, oh gosh, this is going to be a long year, isn't it? It's been worth that. It's been worth it. And I think the only reason that today, with Senator Hashmi having $5 million and me over the course of a year only breaking, I think maybe we've raised $1 million now, a little more, maybe. The only reason that today we're tied, and we just got another poll today that I'm like 1 point behind her, so statistical dead heat, I think is because of that work. And win or lose, I will be proud that I am the kind of person who will go out and do that type of politicking, and I call it human interaction, while others don't have the energy or don't have the interest in doing it. So what question has been the most difficult? I am told, and I ran into a young man as we came into the building who was pretty nasty, and I don't know if you all have seen this handout about the Tumblr account. Well, I'm offended, to be candid, that continues to be brought up. I'm deeply offended by it. I'll just be candid with you. And I'm offended. This is not an indictment of UVA at all, but University of Virginia has an honor code. St. Christopher's had an honor code. You don't lie about people. And you don't tolerate people who do lie. And I must say, I understand it's politics, and if you want to attack me about Donald Trump, or you want to attack me about being pro-life, or wanting to cut the car tax, fair game. You want to attack me because you don't think I'm experienced or you don't like the experience. Totally fine. I can handle it. What has been most upsetting to me is to have people lie in a way that they know is deadly. And calling someone some of the horrible names that I've been called, a white supremacist. My African-American partner was very surprised that he'd lived with a white supremacist for the last 9 years. These people know what they're doing, and they're putting a target on my back with reckless language that is not true, and I resent it very much. I understand it's politics. I got to answer the question, and I'm going to answer the question, and I'm going to put people in their place, just like I did when the initial pronouncement was made and people were trying to blackmail me. I want everybody in this room to go out and tell all of your friends, win or lose, I will never be bullied, ever, by anybody. By anybody. No one is going to bully me. And I'll be candid and honest with you. If I've made a mistake, I will try to own up to it, but I'm not going to put up with that. So, you know that wasn't directed at you, right? You did that was just, yes, well, yes. So, but actually that has been the thing that has bothered me the most is something that everybody knows would be deeply harmful, whether I win or not. And now for the rest of my life, I'll have 100,000 stories written about something that's completely fabricated. Not to say I'm a perfect person, but yeah, that's been hurtful. And it keeps coming up, and I'm really mad about it. And so all of us should have a sense of honor. Here's my 7-minute answer to your simple question. But tonight, while we had the reception across the street, we launched a virtual artificial intelligence debate with Senator Hashmi, since she has refused to really show up for a debate. It was not my intention. I didn't really like this idea because I thought surely, the governor will have the debate, the AG will have the debate, and then she's going to feel the pressure, right? And she'll agree to do a debate. I mean, come on, 1 hour out of this whole thing, and National Public Radio has invited you, and you won't go in National Public. What do I have to do to rig it for you? Have it at DNC headquarters? Come on. But she just wouldn't do it. So I got together some people who have worked on the campaign, and I said, look, I want you all to put together a virtual debate. Here are the rules, though. I'm not going to be in on the planning of the questions and everything. You all do that. Don't talk to me about that. Make sure they're thorough. And don't lie about Ghazala Hashmi. Don't turn this into a bash Senator Hashmi session. I think her answers will inform the public on their own. And I hope that the public will choose me. But don't embellish, and we need to be able to document every word. Do not make it up. So tonight at 6 o'clock, we ran the tape of a virtual debate in which I was informed of the format and the elements a couple of minutes before we went on air. We had no rehearsal. I didn't even get to prepare. It was like a 14-hour day for me that day. I wish I'd worn some eye concealer because that's the only thing I was disappointed in, is I didn't look as good as I wanted to. And I answered without a teleprompter, unscripted, just with my notes, the questions that Senator Hashmi was asked. That's another thing that I hope you will take away, that I could have turned that into a circus. I could have used it as a way to stomp and smash and ridicule and humiliate someone who chose not to show up for a debate. But I chose to run it. I chose to run it as is, and I think that is, I hope, something that will inform you about my sense of honor to someone that I do hope to defeat, but I want to defeat her the correct way and not abuse her. I want the attention. I think she made a decision not to do the debate, deliberately to deny me the press coverage that comes with the debate. I guess that's a strategic decision politically, but most of you probably missed it tonight. I hope you'll go back and watch it on YouTube, and you'll feel good about it. Okay, so one question, I took 12 minutes. Who else has a question? I'll try to tighten it up a little bit. Yes, ma'am.
The president sees the Capitol, Washington, D.C., as sort of the door to the United States, and it's important for him for that to be welcoming and safe, and all the things that the efforts he's put into Washington, D.C. You were talking about the water crisis in Richmond. My husband and I are actually relocating to Richmond in the next month.
Well, welcome.
I'm sure. Thank you very much. And there's, obviously a serious homeless issue in the city of Richmond as well, in parts. So I wonder, is the infrastructure in the state set up to address these issues, or is there something missing? Is it that they didn't do what they could have done and the setup is there, or does something need to be revamped, and what are your thoughts on that?
Would you like for me to be completely candid?
Sure, I love candid.
That's my general demeanor. Look, there have been a lot of leaders in Richmond, and the last 40 years, they've been Democrats. So I could indict Democrat leadership, and I think there is blame to go around there. The infrastructure in a city the age of Richmond that has been built upon, not as dramatically as Rome, where you see centuries of history, but it's been paved over, and we're still using pipes that I think are a century old in Richmond. Those things require attention. And I just don't think we have put people in office. You don't have to be a specialist. You don't have to be a PhD in urban design. I think you need to be thoughtful. Like, on day one, do you walk in and say, hey, I need an assessment, not just of what the pollsters are telling me are the top issues that need to be addressed, but what the employees and the citizens are saying need to be addressed? Where are we seeing problems? And when a city can't fill the potholes, that's a good indication that there's bad management. And this just happened to reveal itself with the pipes. I am expecting and hopeful that the leadership of Richmond will go to the General Assembly and will petition for funding, and federal funding, even though we're $37 trillion in debt and it's all monopoly money. That's a problem. I hope everybody's aware of that, to try to fix some of these issues. Because this is our capital. There are a lot of good people who live there who don't deserve to be treated poorly. And we have leaders who have not been capable of making the list of priorities, I think, appropriately. Now, in the interest of candor, I am loath to beat up on people, even when I was on the radio, because being a leader is tough. It is. When Ralph Northam made, I think, really bad decisions, maybe not at the beginning of COVID, but month 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I had a lot of sympathy for him. Like, no one cares what the guy on the radio says about COVID, but they're going to write a history book if 500,000 Virginians die from COVID. So you want to talk about pressure, getting in your bed, you could be in the beautiful governor's mansion, but that doesn't relieve you of the burden of, I've got to make smart decisions. And I actually wrote to Governor Northam and said that. Like, I'm being harsh with you on the radio because I disagree, but I want you to know I am thinking of what you must be going through as you make these difficult decisions. And if you were to tell me this is not political, it's not an attempt to crash the economy to win a presidential election, I would feel so much better about it. I haven't heard back. So, again, I've chosen my words carefully tonight, and I've had enough experiences where I've seen, I think, responsible people make what they thought was a good decision that turned out not to be, that I am loath to beat up on people. I still have to be candid about whether I think it worked or not, but I do think we have a number of leaders right now who are not going through the mental calculations and the moral thought process that you have to deliver good responses and results for the people. I hope, if I'm lucky enough to be elected 4 years from now, you'll have to tell me whether I was any good at it. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, the governor was a frequent guest on my show. I'm glad Glenn Youngkin was governor. I think he's done a good job. I think there was a dramatic misunderstanding at the beginning of this campaign, and I do think there are people who want to hand select who will be the leaders of the state. And I don't, to be candid with you, the governor and I have not had a sit down and talked through all of this, but may I assure you that he recognizes that it's important for the Republican ticket to win. Based on my most recent conversations with him after a long period of no interaction, I don't want to put words in his mouth. I don't think I'm being unfair or presumptuous. I do believe that he sees how hard I've been working. I have no doubt that every morning he gets the newspaper clips digitally and says, wow, John is doing the work and what he's saying is reasonable. I don't know, you'll have to ask him how he really feels about it, but he did hold a breakfast for me as a fundraiser. I have appeared with him. In fact, he introduced me last week in Senator Obenchain's district. So, there are moments where people get their wires crossed. And of course, the allegations that were made against me were alarming. I wish everyone had handled it differently, but I think we have worked through it. And hopefully, whether people were skeptical about me or not, they've reached a place, if they've bothered to watch, where they'll feel comfortable about who I am and the work that I put in the campaign, which I hope will be a sign of the work that I will put in as lieutenant governor. He kind of needs to be here to do the bookend to that, but that's my answer. Thank you. Yes, sir.
John, I got a question that probably begs my political ignorance here. In the federal system, the president and the vice president run as a ticket. You're running as a lieutenant governor independently of the governor.
Right.
Assuming, worst case, that you get a Democratic governor and you get elected as a lieutenant governor, what legal powers do you have to fulfill your campaign promises besides just a seat at the table of the governor?
Well, it's a very legitimate question. Regardless of who's elected, the lieutenant governor has a very limited legislative authority. You don't get to introduce bills. Basically, you preside over the Senate, you break tie votes, and then you stop by to make sure the governor's breathing in the morning. That's the job. So I asked a number of people, including some Democrats, who took my call. Is this worth doing? This seems like it could be not the best job to have. It only pays $36,000 a year. And I had a lady the other day who came up to me in Stanton, and she said, "Where's the lieutenant governor's mansion?" And I said, "I think it's my townhouse in Short Pump if I get elected." So, look, this is an important position because of the tie-breaking vote, but it's an even more important position if you have someone like me who is determined to travel the state, trying to explain why certain things are great for Virginia and why certain things may be really bad for Virginia. And someone like me who has been a business person and a salesperson, if you will, who can go to CEOs in the United States and overseas and be an ambassador on behalf of the Commonwealth and try to bring business to the state. I would respectfully suggest to you, if there are any professors here, forgive me, but Senator Hashmi is a poetry professor and a literature professor for 30 years. Great job. I'm sure she's great at it, but I think I'm going to be more effective at selling the state to business people than she will, just to be candid. I do think that it is time for someone to be at the Capitol who is bold and is unafraid. And, I think that's me. If I had kids, maybe that would temper me a little bit. I don't have children. Alonzo's been willing to kind of go through fire and hell with me this year, so I think he's sticking around, thank God. But you've got to have somebody who is willing to risk it all to tell the truth, and that is my intention. Yes, sir.
From the beginning of your talk, you detailed effect after effect of the poisonous gas that Americans, Virginians among them, have been breathing these last 30 years.
A long time.
Aside from voting for you, what can we do, we here, what can we do to dispel that gas? It's called us against them. It also seeps into the corners of even the most integral of our personalities. What can we do to dispel the effects of us against them?
Well, I appreciate that question. I think it's an important question. Being present tonight indicates that you're on the right path. I don't know how many people in this audience are voting for me. I assume there are a couple of people who are just curious. So I appreciate that. When I went to Baylor University in Waco, Texas, the largest Baptist university in the world, I was Episcopalian, so they didn't know what to do with me. I mean, I was a real minority on that campus. They invited the spokesperson for the Soviet Union to come and speak, a man named Vladimir Posner. Well, look, you're going to have a hard time finding somebody who hasn't lived under communism, who hates the commies more than I do. I was in the front row to hear Vladimir Posner. Not because I thought he was going to change my mind, but I wanted to hear from him, not from some reporter at NBC or CBS or PBS. I wanted to hear from him what he would say. I wanted to take the measure of this man who I had seen on the news for a decade or more and decide for myself what I thought of him and his arguments and rhetoric. And may I suggest to you that that's the essence of this institution. I think that you arrive on the grounds here, and of course you have opinions, and hopefully those opinions are challenged, and you read and you study and you maybe evolve or change or at least understand a different perspective, and you are prepared upon your graduation to enter into this civic society and be engaged and model the good behavior, the civilized discourse that we should expect in a place like Virginia. And somehow that has been lost. I would like to model that, even on my worst day, so that someone can say, you know, I didn't like that guy and I disagreed with him, but he was a decent person and he was, for the most part, calm and steady and thoughtful. And I would challenge all of you in your own world. You're not going to run for statewide office, at least not right now, but you could model that and you could gently encourage other people to live and present themselves that way. Online, where it's very easy to be a keyboard warrior and be hostile, I think that is something we can do. And try to restore some decency. Now, don't get me wrong, if somebody crosses me, and if there needs to be a fight, I will get in the fight. I'm prepared to do that, but I would prefer to have an intellectual debate and conversation, and that is one reason, not to continue to bring up Ghazala Hashmi, but that is one reason why I am personally very offended that she would not engage with me in that way. And I hope that Virginia voters who want a higher level of discussion than what we've seen of late will be offended also. You should be, I think. Yes, sir. Okay. So it's 8:09, and do you want to do one or two more? I was told 8:15. Is that right? You want to end at 8:15? Yes, sir. The Richmond couple is going to, okay.
So good football teams have good players, right? And at the end of the day, you do have to recruit, and as your main effort to bring businesses to the state of Virginia, what in your mind is like the one or two strong, unique value propositions that Virginia has? I don't want to lose to North Carolina or Tennessee or some of these other states that you mentioned, but what is it? What is it about Virginia? 'Cause I do remember sitting in the chamber, one of their dinners 15 years ago, and I think Virginia was rated maybe number 1 or 2 in terms of the business climate and how strong they were, and we've lost a little bit of ground since that time.
Yeah.
So,
Well, Governor Youngkin, I think, has done a good job. I mean, clearly, as the CEO of a major investment firm, I don't think there's any room of executives he couldn't walk in and not be intimidated, probably, hold his own. He's wealthy, he's been successful, so I give that governor credit. George Allen, who came through UVA, managed to do that too. Jim Gilmore, Bob McDonnell. So I don't think you have to have $1 billion in the bank or have been a CEO to do that. I think the goal when you're speaking to members of the Chamber of Commerce, like I used to, is to demonstrate that you have an appreciation for the struggles that businesses have, and you are cognizant that every policy that is put in place in Richmond or in Washington does have an impact on somebody. And even if it's well-intentioned to fix a problem, it may have the unintended consequences of exacerbating the problem or creating new problems. So the right to work is one thing that I think is the preeminent issue on the ballot this year. The Democrats, very surprisingly, have promoted $15 an hour minimum wage, $20 an hour minimum wage, $25 an hour minimum. My head's going to explode. If you're not economically if you're economically illiterate, you think that sounds like a good idea. But if you've actually studied it, you recognize that every time you raise that wage artificially, you put people out of work. Businesses can't keep up. And sure, they're going to be billionaires. I don't know why there's this obsession about rich people. I've been to the poorest countries on the planet. They're rich people. They live behind walls, and they have bodyguards, and they have fancy cars that take them to the airport for their vacation. Everybody else is living in squalor. So don't fool yourself into thinking you're going to get rid of rich people and everyone's going to be equal. What you're doing when you engage in these types of strategies is you're probably dooming us to all live at a substandard compared to what we could have lived in. And I think trying to explain that, hopefully with some grace and some respect for people, is important going forward. And I think having CEOs sit across the table from someone where about 10 minutes into the conversation, they're nodding their head going, okay, this guy gets it. He knows that I'm not going to put $100 million into this complex unless I'm confident that some know-it-all isn't going to put in a bunch of red tape that's going to then shut me down. And I've shared this in a couple of audiences, but perhaps this audience will appreciate it. I had dinner with a group of CEOs of manufacturing companies in Virginia just a couple of weeks ago. It was a very nice dinner. Good. I was hoping they'd give me some money, and they didn't, but anyway. I said, what worries you? And they said, right to work going away in this minimum wage, because they got a couple of hundred workers each. And I got the impression, you never know, but I got the impression they respect their employees. They don't abuse the employees. And I can tell when somebody's dismissive, like I don't care about the people who work for me. I don't like that. Personally, I do not like that. But I detected that they actually respect these workers because they need them minimally. And some of them were Christians who I believe actually think that human beings should be treated correctly. That's important. But they said, hey, if we lose the right to work and the minimum wage goes up, I got a lady over here working in the C-suite who's making a plan to exit. Oh, now that's worrisome to me. So I'm going to share that message with legislators to say, let's tap the brakes before we make these wonderful adjustments on behalf of the workers that will wind up, as California has demonstrated, putting a lot of entry-level employees and folks who are on the lower ladder, no offense to them at all. If you get up and go to work every morning, I have respect for you. I have so much respect for you, I'm not going to do something stupid to cause you to lose your job. And there are not many people at the Capitol who are thinking like that, I'm afraid. So it's 8:14. You want to squeeze in one quickie here at the end? Yes, sir.
Virginia has, I believe, the largest single collection of data centers in the world right now, mostly clustered around the capital region, at the cost of huge energy and water needs.
Yeah.
Maryland, our sister state, made a whole bunch of bad political decisions and is now a net deficit energy producer and is having real problems getting sufficient energy to Maryland to feed their data centers and their economy. And that's bad political decisions. I mean, that's why they're having those problems. What is your vision at state level, as a state level leader, to balancing this big data, AI, energy needs versus both consumer and the other business needs, because other businesses need energy as well?
I am told, thank you very much for the question. I've been asked that several times, as you can imagine, over the last couple of months, sometimes by people who are convinced that data centers are great and a few people who are absolutely against them. So it's been interesting to talk through that with people on both sides of the spectrum. I am told that the legislature is considering, or will be considering in January, a pause on construction of new data centers. Now, I don't know that that's true. I haven't seen the legislation, but I think there's a growing concern about the use of resources for those data centers. My answer to this question is consistent with what I would say about solar farms and about some of the other projects that every environmentalist activist in Richmond thinks is so great, but then they want other people to put it in their, on their farmland about 100 miles away from where they live. I think the locality needs to make the decision. The local board of supervisors and the zoning boards need to decide whether this is something they actually want in their community. I'm running for lieutenant governor of the state of Virginia, but I'm actually very deferential to those who are closest to the voters so that they can make the decision that the voters will hold them accountable for, and they will be responsible for the community they live in another 10 years if they mess it up. I think that's a wise way to approach this, and I think Mr. Jefferson would agree. May I say that I'm really concerned about the energy issue, not just about data centers, but for the whole state. Do you realize, and I don't think this is political rhetoric, I think this is the truth, we're getting closer and closer to brownouts and blackouts in Virginia. You know what that means? That means in 2 or 3 months, you come home and your heat's not on. In the summer in August, when we all expect to have the AC hit us as soon as we hit the door and we feel good about it, the AC isn't going to be on. The solution for the micromanaging types is that we will take over your thermostat and we will adjust where it should be. No. I'm not letting a bureaucrat in Richmond take over my thermostat. I'm not letting a bureaucrat in Richmond make any of those personal decisions about my life. What car I'm going to drive? No, you're not going to decide that. Whether I have salt on the dinner table? No, you're not going to decide that. I will not allow it. And whether I win or lose as lieutenant governor, you can count I'm going to speak on that. But we have got to stop fooling ourselves into thinking that restricting our ability to produce the energy that we expect and need in this society is saving the world. I do not believe it is. I've been to India, I've been to China, I've been to Sri Lanka, I've been throughout Southeast Asia. Believe me, we are not saving the world right now by harnessing ourselves, trapping ourselves, and restricting the growth of our own economy. And the great thing about us in Virginia and in the United States is we have the best minds, and we, for the moment at least, have the human capital and the capital funds to improve how we deliver energy, how we create it and deliver it. We can do the things that are necessary to try to protect the air and the water. And we can make smart decisions when a pipeline needs to be built and should be built so that we don't destroy pristine land. Some people laugh at me when I say this, but I'm sincere. I'm an Eagle Scout. I would bet you I've spent more nights sleeping out under the stars in Virginia than anybody who's not an Army career person or Marine. Truly. Alonzo gets mad at me. We pull over on the side of the road because I want to take a picture of this beautiful view. And just the other day, I was with one of my staffers, and Doug Wilder called me. And I said, oh my God, we got to pull over so I don't lose the signal. But when I hung up the phone with Doug Wilder, I said, get out of the car. Look at this. Look how beautiful this is. This guy's 23 years old. I'm 54. I said, my goal, and I'm not making this up, my goal is when you are 54, this still up with a way to keep this economy growing, to take care of our citizens so we don't live in a substandard situation, and we protect everything we value for the next generation. And that's one of the reasons that I felt like I had to get off the sidelines and be one of the voices to try to accomplish that. I appreciate that question. It's an important one. And I appreciate all of you coming tonight and staying for an extra 21 minutes past the end time. And if you'd like to stay, I'll be happy to chat with some of you at the end here. Thank you very much for having me. And thank you to the Jefferson Council.